Please welcome Paul Saccone.
Thank you. We made this little short film. It was shot in a day with URSA Mini 4.6K, and I'm just going to play it for you.
It was a beautiful place then, as it is now, the sun shining on the warm sand. But I wasn't paying attention to any of that. They had followed me to the end of the earth. I was running for my life. I was trapped. They were just about to get me.
There's nowhere else to run now, Miss Pretty.
And that's the first time I saw him. He looked filthy and dangerous, but strong and handsome. I was 2 against 1.
But where did he come from?
What?
Where did he come from? Did he jump down from the cliffs?
He came out of nowhere. And he showed those pirates what a real swordsman can do.
So he beat them?
Oh, yes. We left them beaten and tied up, right there at the cliffs.
Come back!
And I told him all about the pirates and the treasure map.
You told him about the map?
I did. And you know what he said?
What?
He said, I also have a map.
No way.
And he did. So we spent hours plotting a course and planning a journey that would eventually lead to our treasure.
I'm so glad I've met
Me too.
you. In fact, you're the most amazing woman I've ever met.
I don't like where this is going.
And the most beautiful woman I've ever met.
Can't we skip the mushy part?
I'm telling the story. Thank you for saving my life.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
Oh no!
And they lived happily ever after.
But what happened to the pirates?
Oh, no one knows. They could still be out there, coming after our treasure.
Yeah, right.
Well, what is this?
Daddy! Come here.
Hey, buddy.
Come here. Come here. Come here.
What are you guys doing in here?
Mommy was telling me about the first time you guys met, and about the treasure map, and how you saved her from the pirates.
And the first time we kissed.
Well, you know that none of this is true, right? It was actually her who saved me.
Whoa!
All right, so that's our little pirate movie, and we're going to use that for some of our demos. So it sounds like a lot of people in the room are using DaVinci Resolve already, which is awesome. We released, or as a public beta, version 12.5 at NAB this year. And all kidding aside, we started this out as a small release. We were just going to do a lot of small things that meant a lot of people, that would mean a lot to editors and colorists in their everyday workflow. Lots of tiny features that really just refined and polished the workflow. And then our engineering team, which is awesome, started to put in some really cool new big features, and we called it 12.5, but we've got like over 250 new features in this thing. So it's pretty amazing. So all kidding aside, it probably should have been a 13, but we stuck with 12.5. So I'm going to start really quickly on the media page. For those of you that don't know, Resolve is organized into 4 pages. The icons are at the bottom: media, edit, color, and deliver, and we'll be stepping through each of those. So I'm going to move really fast to cover some of the basics so I can get to the new stuff to show you. On the media page, this is like a big import window. This is where we get footage in. So you see all of the hard drives that are connected to my machine are at the top of the screen, and everything that's in my project is at the bottom of the screen. Once you drag stuff from the top to the bottom, you can, of course, click on footage. You can see it here. You've got metadata associated with it. One of the cool things that you can do in Resolve is you can select all of your footage, audio and video, at the same time, and have it automatically sync your audio to your video based on either timecode or waveform analysis. So if you've got your audio recorded in the field on a recorder, this is a super easy way to just sync everything in one fell swoop. It's really fast. And not only do you get the audio sync, but you also get the metadata from the audio recorder. So most of the time, the guys that are doing the audio recording are putting shot, scene, take information in there. So that's really, really awesome. All right, so let me talk a little bit about bins. We have our bins here in the media pool that I've made. You can make arbitrary folders of bins and put anything you want in there. You also can have new power bins in 12.5, and power bins, and there's nothing in this one because I forgot to set it up. Power bins are basically shared bins that you can see across all of your projects. So you have a sound effects library, a graphics library, you load all that stuff into a power bin, and then you've got access to it across everything you're doing. So really cool, those are new. And then of course there are smart bins, and smart bins let you see all of your footage based on metadata. So you can go in here and you can create a smart bin, and you can do a keyword search for all beach shots or sunset shots. And you can see that it's filtering here, or all tent shots, or all the boy shots. And then what happens is, as new footage is added to this project with matching metadata, it will automatically show up in these bins, so you don't have to manually organize your footage into bins. It'll just look at the metadata for you. So metadata is increasingly important, and because it is, we have decided to add a metadata panel to the edit page, so you don't have to switch back and forth between the edit and the media pages. So this is new in 12.5. The other thing that is new, and I'm going to just select all of these clips, and I'm going to go to clip attributes, and I just want to turn this off. So what you normally edit with are your file names from your camera, right? And these are all the file names from the camera. Well, these clips all have metadata with shot, scene, and take information. What you can do in Resolve is you can select all of those clips, and I've selected everything but the timelines. I have a couple of timelines in this bin as well. You can go to clip attributes, and you can use metadata tags to rename the clips. So I type the %, and it gives me a list of metadata. So I'm going to use the shot field. Then I'm going to do %, I'm going to use scene, type the letter T, %, and take. And when I do that, you're going to see all of my footage is renamed with shot, scene, and take information right there. So now when you're editing with it, you've got meaningful names with which to edit. You don't have to be looking at 6,000 clips that say Blackmagic or Red or Ari or whatever the default camera names are. So I'm going to go and select this stuff, and I'm just going to sort by display name so everything's in order for me. We'll turn off the metadata inspector, and we'll just start some editing. So I've already got a couple of clips in the timeline. Loading clips and marking clips is pretty straightforward. I&O keys, I'm not going to go over that stuff. I'm going to start showing you some of the new features straight away. So one of the new features is when you drag clips into the edit overlay, we have 2 new commands here. We have an append at end and a ripple overwrite. So regardless of where your playhead is on the timeline, if I use the append at end command, it just adds the clips to the end of the timeline. So you don't have to go move the timeline. A lot of what we did was either time-saving steps that combined multiple edit and trim operations in one, or just made things a little more seamless and quicker to do. So that's one of the new items in the edit overlay. The other thing that we've added is if you want to work with 2:3:5 or an aspect ratio that's not 16:9 in this case, you can turn on output blanking, and that will automatically mask the image for you. So you don't have to have another layer with a graphic or anything on it. It's just there. You can grade, you can color, you can edit, do whatever you want. When you output your files, it's still there. You've got output blanking, so automatic output blanking. All right, so let's, I know I'm moving fast, and I already saw a hand go up, but we'll do Q&A toward the end. And feel free to shout out and give me hurrahs and hallelujahs and that sort of stuff, because it's so much more entertaining when you do. And laugh at my bad jokes. Thank you, Michael. So in this clip, let me just play it. This is the part in the movie where he says, "But where did he come from?" And we're going to do a split edit for audio.
I'm from.
What?
I'm from.
So you can see that it's obviously not marked correctly at the moment. So what I'm going to show you is we have a new feature which is called basically audio waveform overlays in our source monitor. So I can see my audio waveform with my video. Right? That is huge. So if you've got a long piece and you're looking for the starts and stops of sentences or for a sound effect like a sword clank or something, it's super easy to see that. I can even zoom into it a little bit more so you can get a closer look, and I can see exactly where he starts that sentence. So right about there is where he says, "But where did he come from?"
But where did he?
So I'm just going to mark that now. I'm just going to right-click, mark my audio in, and drag my edit to the timeline. So, yeah, you're right. So Michael just said Walter Murch would love that, and I think he's right. So this is a huge feature. I mean, this is like such a time saver. I've been using this in my own work, and it's pretty awesome. So I just dragged a bunch of clips into the timeline. You will see we have reorganized, for those of you that have used Resolve before, we've reorganized all of our editing and trimming tools under the Edit, Trim, Timeline, and Clip menus. And I don't have time to go through all of this, but there are literally over a dozen new commands in the Trim menu alone. Some of them have keyboard shortcuts, some of them don't. All of our keyboard shortcuts pretty much match Final Cut 7. So if you're used to 7, that's the default. You can customize the keyboard. Let me just show you that really quick. Keyboard mapping right here, DaVinci Resolve, Premiere, Final Cut 10, or Media Composer. Or you can create your own custom sets. So all of these commands can be customized however you'd like. So there's a ton of new stuff in here. Trim start, trim end. We've got ripple cuts, paste inserts. So I'm going to show you a couple of those now. So I'm going to go to trim mode, select this clip. If I just hit shift bracket, I can trim the head to the head of the clip to the location of the playhead. I can very quickly trim the tail of the clip to the location of the playhead. For those of you that haven't used Resolve before, the basic trim tools, if I click on my trim icon here in the timeline, it's all context sensitive. So when I'm in the middle of a clip, it's a roll tool. When I'm on the edges, it's a ripple. And here's a cool thing you can do. You can actually ripple edit or use any edits on multiple clips at the same time. So I can do asymmetric trimming, different tracks in different directions all at the same time. You can also do dynamic trimming, which is it's very dynamic, right? So, so it's basically the ability to trim using the JKL key. So I could go over here and hit W to turn dynamic trimming on.
Where did he come from?
And then I can do my JKL trimming. You can also just turn on looping, and you can loop around the playhead and trim with
Where did he come from?
trim with your edit keys while it's playing back. So all of the trimming and editing stuff, all the core things that you would do in any NLE, they're all in there. And then there's just a ton of new stuff. So that's a quick look at some of the basic editing stuff. Let me show you some of the new commands as well. So ripple cut, for instance. This is a very simple one, but you know what? You delete a clip and then you have to close a gap, and it's a two-step process. Now with Resolve, you can just do ripple cut, and it does it all in one fell swoop. Just a little time saver. I can cut these two clips. Maybe I want to insert them here on my timeline at the location of the playhead. Instead of having to slice my timeline and move everything down, I can just go in and use the new paste insert command, and it just cuts it for me, copies those two clips in there straight away. So lots of really, really just fast things to do. If I, for example, let me just shorten this clip. If I, for example, have this clip in my timeline and I wanted to replace it with a longer clip, which this one is. So let me just double click. This one is 1 second and 13 frames, and this one is 3 seconds and 18 frames. And I just want to replace this clip. We've got a new 4-point edit called a ripple overwrite. So all I want to do is I want to overwrite the highlighted clip of my timeline. And if I have more or less media that I'm putting in there, I want it to close the gap or push everything down accordingly. And I can use the new ripple overwrite command, and what it's going to do is it's going to replace the clip and ripple everything else down. Woo! So that is a huge time saver. Let's look at retiming and animation. So I have a bunch of timelines set up so that I can just jump right to it. One thing you'll notice is I've got colored clips. This is new in Resolve 12.5 as well. I can right-click on any clip. I can change its color. So you can organize your clips. Maybe all your VFX are one color, maybe all your sound effects or your dialogue or whatever. You can color code and coordinate this however you like. So that's kind of cool. In this example, I'm going to show you some retiming and some keyframing. So retiming, the first thing is going to be the sword fight. They're kind of slow, and they're sped up in the final movie so that they're a little more intense. So we're just going to do some timing now. So this second clip here on the timeline that we're going to work on, we're going to do a basic speed change. There are two types of speed changes, static or constant and variable. So this is a constant speed change. I'm going to ripple the sequence because as I make this clip faster, it's going to get shorter, and I just want the rest of the sequence to ripple with it. So super easy to do that. A little more involved are variable speed changes. So I'm going to zoom in. And again, somebody mentioned earlier during Stump the Guru, Shift-Z and all that stuff, all those keyboard shortcuts with Final Cut 7, they're all the same. I'm going to turn on my retime controls. And you've always been able to do this in Resolve since version 12, actually. But now we've added a new retime curve. And for those of you that haven't seen this before, Resolve has a curve editor built right into the timeline. So whenever you do keyframe animations of any sort, you do it right in context with your clip in the program in the timeline. You don't have to go do keyframes in another window. So what you're looking at here is my retime frame control. And this represents a frame's specific position in time. If I move this frame left or right, things will get faster or slower on either side. You'll expand and compress time on either side. If I move this frame up or down, you're changing the direction of playback, forward or reverse. And you can see those updating with the tick marks at the top there. Now, we also have another type of brand new curve for retiming, and it's the retime speed curve. And what this lets me do is this lets me adjust the speed just between two frames. So maybe I don't want to change those frames' location. I just want to change the speed between them. So in this case, the clip starts at 100%, and this middle section we're going to take up to about 130, and this end section we'll take up to about 140. And then I'm going to click on these speed points, and I'm going to use the Bezier tool to just smooth them out a little bit, and then we'll play them back. So that's a very, thank you. You guys are great. Thank you. All right, so let's do some keyframe animation. So retiming, super easy, right in the timeline. Keyframe animation. I'm going to just open the inspector, and the inspector has everything that you would expect it to have in there. I'm going to make it the full length of the screen. You've got composite modes. We've got like half a dozen new composite modes in Resolve 12.5 as well. We've got transform controls, cropping, dynamic zoom, retime and scaling settings, so your quality levels for those things, and then lens correction. I'll show you lens correction a little later. This is one of the features that's only available in DaVinci Resolve Studio, the paid version, but everything else I'm showing you so far is in the free version. So dynamic zoom is new, and this is basically a new way to animate. It's similar to the the free version. So there are really three versions of Resolve. There's the free version, which you can use for SD, HD, and Ultra HD, and 99% of what I'm showing you today is in the free version. There is the $9.95 version, which basically lets you go to 4K, add stereoscopic 3D, a bunch of filters and plugins that are not in the free version, and multi-user support. So the ability for editors and colorists to work on the same project at the same time. And then there's the version with the panel, which is $30,000. So you get Studio with the panel for $30,000. So it's a big jump between free and 30, but the free version does more than most paid NLEs do. So I think you should check it out if you haven't already. So dynamic zoom. This is similar to a Ken Burns effect, in which basically you've got a starting point and an ending point. So you can reframe shots. Green is where it's going to start, and red is where it's going to end. So if I want to say zoom in on this a little bit, I can start with the green square and end with the red square, press play, and I've reframed the shot. And clearly that was a very ugly job, but if you just want to do a simple reframe, hallelujah, right? Yay. Just you pick your start, your end point, and you're done. So I'm going to reset that, and I'm going to turn that off because I'm going to show you the more traditional way of doing it with keyframes, because you have a little more control over it than just a start and an end position. So in my inspector, the little diamonds are keyframe buttons. I just click that to add my starting keyframe. And what I want to do is I want to reframe this shot to get the water out of it. So we're going to just zoom it up a little bit, and then I'm going to just move it over so that we get more of these flowers on the cliff in. And then we'll go to the last frame in the shot, and maybe we'll, you know what? I didn't do anything there because I didn't have the clip selected. Okay, so there's my first frame. Okay, and on my last frame, I'm going to zoom up a little bit more, and we're going to center our pirate guy. Maybe we'll do a little rotation so the camera kind of spins on the way down. So let's take a look at that. So full keyframe animation controls. I'm going to zoom in here. As I mentioned earlier, you have your curve editor, so if you wanted to edit any of these, you could just add keyframes. This is going to get really ugly as I do this, people. So don't take your eyes off that screen, okay? So we've added a lot of new features to the curve editor here in 12.5. First is this pop-up that lets you select any of your parameters. And second is the ability to grab any keyframes, move them in time. You can delete them. You can copy and paste keyframes. So anything that you would expect to do in a traditional keyframe animation editor, you can now do. You can also go here on screen and you can click the points on the screen and you can smooth them out. You get Bezier handles. You can make curves. So you can do some really ugly stuff. It's great. It's really awesome. All right, so that's keyframing, retiming, and some animation stuff. We're just moving right along here. We're going to go look at transitions now. So I'm going to just make that a little smaller, and we're going to switch to my transition demo. So transitions are always the most exciting thing in any NLE demo, right? I swear. They're awesome. So in Resolve, you right-click, you can add a transition and set its duration in one step. So just quarter, half, 1 second, 2 second durations here. It's really nice to be able to just do that without having to add the transition and then do it later. I'm going to add another one here because I want to show you a new feature in 12.5. I can actually select multiple transitions at the same time and edit them. So if I wanted to change this cross dissolve to a clock wipe, I could. There's a heart wipe. We've added a heart wipe. So, so there, it's all about the heart wipe. So we've added a lot of new transitions as well to 12.5. So, and of course you want your clock wipe to have a border and it to be feathered. So it's very dramatic. I mean, that's awesome, right? But wait, there's more. There's more. Okay, because when I hit my keyframe button, remember that curve editor I told you about? You could have linear, you can ease in, you can ease out, or you can create entirely custom curves. So I can go here and I can click on it. If I can just click on it, there we go. Hit my Bezier button. So maybe I want this clock wipe to start out really slow and then ramp up at the end. Well, or maybe I want to do it just the opposite way. I want it to come in fast and end slow. Totally customizable curves. That's cool, right? What's even better is that with Resolve 12.5, you can now create a transition preset. You can say, this is Paul's 8 o'clock wipe because it's almost 8 o'clock. All right? And then, I know, they get worse, trust me. So when you go into your effects library here, you can see this was my previous demo and this is the one that I just did. So we've got all kinds of cool things. Pentagon irises, heart wipes, smooth cut, which will, if you're cutting between sentences in like a documentary or something and there's a jump cut, it'll actually use optical flow analysis to smooth that out. So really, lots of really cool things in here. You should really explore that and check them out. All right. How many people do multicam work? A lot of you. All right, we got some great new multicam stuff too. Let me go to my multicam thing, shut off my inspector. All right, so for the multicam demo, this pirate thing was shot with multiple cameras, but I have a better set of footage to use for the demo. And it's a band, And it might get a little loud, so I'm going to just turn this down a bit. So let me go to my multicam timeline. There it is. All right. So we have metadata. When you click on it, you can see that I've got metadata in here for the band, keywords, there's some angle information, there's camera information in the metadata panel. Well, in the new multi-camera tool, we can use this metadata. So I can select all of my clips, and I can create a new multicam clip using the selection. When I do, I get this pop-up window. It looks very familiar to last year. You can select the frame rate in case you have mixed frame rates. You can define the frame rate. We've added the ability to sync by marker. In this case, I'm going to select time code. And now we can also use metadata to set the angle name. And we can detect clips that were shot on the same camera. So if the same camera stops and starts during a shoot, Resolve will automatically look at the time code and the metadata information and put those on the same angle for you. Come on, that's a good one. That's an awesome one. All right, so I create that. Just humor me. All right, so I create that, and let's turn our multicam viewer on. Here's our multicam viewer. So you can see that metadata now. It says angle 1 is on stage left, angle 2 is on stage right, 3 is house camera, and 4 is roving camera. So that's really awesome. If I step into this multicam clip, which you can right-click, and you can say open in timeline, you can actually step into it to see all the sources that make up that multicam clip. And you can see this camera starts and stops quite a bit, but Resolve is smart enough to put it all on the same timeline. Now, to get back into my timeline, there's a little breadcrumb trail at the bottom left. I just double-click, and it takes me back to my multicam timeline. I'm going to make a few quick cuts. Oh, before I do that, you can cut audio and video together or separately. You've got your default 2x2, 3x3, 4x4 views. We also added a 1x2 view because a lot of people often just shoot 2 cameras. So that's new this year as well. All right, so I'm going to make a few cuts. All right, that's the best multicam cut ever, right? So you can see that all of these clips are named multicam, multicam, multicam. When you're done with your multicam cut, you can select your clips, and you can now flatten them and get back to your camera sources in your timeline. So really, really handy, great new multicam stuff. All right, so now we're going to look at some effects and some text and stuff. So text, this is one of those little things that just makes me super happy. I can type on screen. Yay! Okay, so for those of you that have been editing with Resolve and use our text tool, you know that you could never type on screen. You always had to do it here in the text box. And our text is actually, our title generator is pretty good. It's really good, actually. It's a full rich text editor. You've got control over everything here. You can very quickly go in and do things like add drop shadows and backgrounds and blurs and all kinds of stuff like that. And then just
As it is now.
play it all back in real time. So it's a really powerful text generator. This next shot is a visual effects shot. Notice that I've got a yellow marker here, and it's a duration marker. This is also new in 12.5, the ability to set duration on markers. They can be rippled with a timeline, or they can stick with it wherever they are in their location. You can define that. And this is a VFX shot. This says add a pirate chip to the shot. It looks like somebody already did that for me, but it's kind of off screen, so I want to fix that. So this visual effects shot was done in Fusion, and Ronnie is going to be on after the break, and he's going to go through Fusion with you. So I had him do this composite, so I'm just going to say open this in Fusion, and these are now linked between Fusion and Resolve. So here's my shot, my visual effects shot. I know, it's awesome, because now not only do you have a great NLE, and the world's best color corrector, which I'm going to jump into for the second part of my demo. But now you have access to all of these visual effects, motion graphics, 3D compositing tools, all from your Resolve timeline. So this composite of the ship here, just play this back for you. So this is it in Fusion. And Fusion is a node-based effects editor. I'm just going to move the ship. I'm just going to say, you know what, it really, we really just need to have the ship there. And everything goes with it, the light, the reflections on the water, everything. It all just goes. By the way, Fusion, free. Free is $0. There is a paid version, much like Resolve, which basically adds multi-user stuff, some collaborative stuff, and a few other things. But for the most part, 90% of what you need to do in life, you can do with the free version. So there's the ship. I'm going to render, start render, boom, pretty fast. I'm not going to quit, but I am going to save this because Ronnie has it set up for his demo afterward. I'm going to come back here to Resolve. All I do is go to Fusion Connect, refresh that clip, and there it is. So the great thing about this is if you're a lone editor or a colorist working on your own stuff, you can flip back and forth between Fusion as much as you want. These things are always linked, and when you do, it actually automatically refreshes. If you're on a shared storage network, or if you have somebody else make the VFX, like I did here, in this case, you select their refresh command. But the great thing is if you are on that shared network, you can actually farm out your visual effects shots, and as they're done and rendered, you just refresh, and you always see the most current rendered version of that effect in your timeline. So that's a pretty cool way to have multiple people working on the same project at once. All right, so how are we doing for time? 8 o'clock, oh my, I'm going too fast. All right, we need Q&A too. All right, so we have spent the last 3 years or so turning Resolve into an NLE. And I really think that at this point with 12.5, you've got virtually every imaginable editing and trimming tool that you've ever seen, plus some really innovative new ones that you don't see anywhere else in Resolve. So if you haven't tried editing with it yet, you should, because it's really awesome. The other thing that I want to show is we have an optimized media command, and you can go into your preferences, and under one of these, and I never remember which one, general options, optimized media, here it is. So you can select your format for your optimized media, DNX, or any of the flavors of ProRes, with or without alpha channel. I believe that came up earlier. And Resolve will automatically create optimized media for you and then use it. So this is especially important if you're working on something like H.264, which is really heavy, right? It's processor intensive. Plus Resolve does everything in 32-bit float YRGB. So our image quality and our image processing engine is a little heavier weight than some of the other software out there. So when you put that on top of H.264, you want something that's going to be a little faster. So use optimized media. You turn optimized media on. It will create your ProRes files or your DNX files. It's not a background or an idle process, so you just have to let it bake those through. And then it automatically swaps the clips out for you, and it manages the relationship between your camera original and your optimized media, and it's a much better editing experience. The other thing that we do is we, of course, edit natively everything from Redcode RAW and ARRI to our own Cinema DNG RAW. So you can edit RAW, you can edit ProRes, you can edit H.264. It's incredibly flexible. So I'm going to switch to a project for some color correction, just because, I love the pirate footage and all, but I figured by this point you want to see something a little different. So this is the color page. So for those of you that haven't experienced Resolve yet, this is one of the big benefits of moving to Resolve, because you can edit and color correct in the same application, and you're not shoehorning a color correction interface into an edit interface. You've got a separate interface for it on the color page that's designed for a colorist's workflow. So the depth of tools you get at your fingertips as an editor now for doing color correction and creative grading is absolutely enormous. All right, so you can see here, just by looking at the color page, it's very easy to understand what's going on here. Everybody's seen the color wheels, they're standard. You've got your scopes on the right, and in the middle you've got another tool palette which has curves. So all these icons are different palettes here, and we're going to go through a bunch of these, and I'll show you what they do. But basically all your tools are on the bottom third. Every clip in my timeline is here as a film strip. I can even turn on a miniature timeline if I want. And then I see my image here. So we give you a lot of ways to automatically grade things or get things to look good very quickly. So if you're not a professional colorist or if you're just learning, there are ways to dive into this and get you started that are really easy. For example, we support color charts. If I go to my color match wheel here and I turn on my color chart, you'll see that you can select the different types of color charts. There's now support for the new X-Rite Color Checker Passport Video and a couple other new ones. All you do is you line up the color chart. I know, right? This is really cool. This makes me feel like I can actually color. And then I click match. Boom. Right? So like, go spend a few bucks on a color chart. It'll make you all look great. Seriously, it's awesome. So, and then, all right, so now I want to, I've got a couple of clips that were shot at the same time. So all I do is I go to the next clip, use the equal key, it adds the grade. Equal key adds the grade. Equal key adds the grade. Equal key, it adds the grade. So the equal key adds the same grade from the previous clip to the one that I'm currently on. And you can see that it's that is art. That is art. All right. The other thing that we have in Resolve is color management. So, for example, you get a lot of log footage. You get stuff that's in RAW, and it's kind of flat looking, right? In your preferences, you can choose to work with DaVinci Color Management. And when you do, you get to choose your input color space, your timeline, and your output color spaces. So now what you'll see is this clip just popped. It just changed dramatically because it knows that this was shot with our URSA Mini 4.6K camera. If you're not working with everything shot on our cameras, and I don't know why you would shoot with anything else, you can, they're now shipping, I'm glad to say. So you can change the input color space on a clip-by-clip basis. You see we've got like all the red stuff in here. We've got Arri, we've got Sony. So basically all of the different RAW formats, you can tell it basically whatever color space your camera shoots with, and it'll do the right thing. The easiest way to do this, remember those smart bins I showed you earlier? Make smart bins for each of your different cameras. So if you have a Red and Alexa, make a smart bin so it automatically sorts the footage, and then you just select that entire bin and change the input color space, and it's really fast and easy. Okay, so let's go and look at my, that was certainly gratuitous, and I appreciate it. All right, so let's go back to our color wheels. We all know how to use these. You know, you've got your your lift, gamma, gain, your highlight, shadows, your midtones. So as I adjust these, you can see that it's changing here in my scope, and you can see the image is changing. I can even use custom curves to sculpt contrast and things like that. So you might ask, where are these color corrections stored? Where is all this information stored that I'm looking at? Well, when I click on nodes, here's a node tree. Now, some people think nodes are scary, but let me tell you a little secret. They're super simple. It's a flow chart. The image comes in at the left, we make a color correction, it goes out at the right. You can add additional nodes to do additional things, and we're going to get into that in a second. But don't let nodes scare you because it's really just a big flow chart. All right? The other thing we have is a gallery. So if I decide that I really like, and let me make this wider. If I decide that I really like this grade, I can go to the View menu, select Still, and I can grab a still. And this grabs the color correction that I just did, and it saves it for me. So if I want to apply that to this clip, I can just go to the next clip and say, Apply grade, and it does it. The other thing, and now I'm going to undo this, and I'm going to undo this one too, because you see these green links? You can set up groups for clips. So let's say I just wanted to select these clips. I could right-click on them, and I could say, Add into a new group, and it links them all together. So now I can go into my node tree, and you can see here in my node tree that I'm operating on the clip. I can also operate on the whole group. So now I can go and I can say, Apply the grade, and it's applied to the whole group. Now obviously I've not done a very good job grading because some of them are too dark, but it's very, very easy when you're working with multiple clips from the same shot to just go and grade them all at the same time. You create a group, you link them together, and you're done. There's a bunch of other new tools here as well that we've added that make it super easy. So underneath your primary color wheels, there are some additional controls. You've got contrast, pivot, saturation, hue. If I click the number 2, you get a second menu with new temperature and tint controls. So if I wanted to cool this off to make it look like he's working later at night, I could do that. And you can see that the image is changing. If I bypass the grade, you can see the before and the after. I'm going to go and I'm going to just bring that down a little bit. Now, I talked about adding nodes and this being a flowchart, so let me give you an example of that. Let's say that I wanted to work a little bit more on his shirt because I think we're getting to kind of the mood that we want the shot to look like, but his shirt is a little too hot. So I right-click, I add a serial node, which is in order, so it's going to add one node after the next one. And then I just want to work on his shirt, so I'm going to click this tool, which is my window tool, and I'm going to add a circle window. You can draw custom shapes, you can set smoothness, you can have a fall off, all that good stuff. It's very easy to do. So now I'm just operating on his shirt. So I'm going to just, tone his shirt down. That's the wrong way. I'm going to tone his shirt down a bit. And then maybe I want to make it a little blue so it looks like it's reflecting off the screen a bit. Right? So there we go. Now I can add another node. And this is cool. I can add a serial node, but it knows that I've now put a window on this clip. So it gives me the option to add an outside node, which will basically, if I can just click my mouse, which will basically let me correct everything but the shirt. So basically it's an inverse node. So it's smart enough to know that the previous node had the mask on it. So now I can go through and I can just say, all right, let's adjust the rest of the shot now. Right? So you can see very quickly how you can just have your primary correction on one node, a secondary correction or a window on another node, the inverse of that, and just with a very few clicks, we've gone from that to that. So really my message for the night is, for those of you that are editors, don't let color correction scare you because there's a lot of cool stuff you can do on the color page, really. There's also a training book out by Dion Scopatullo. So you can order it on Amazon. You get a digital book or a printed book that goes through editing and grading with Resolve. That's really awesome. So we're very happy to have that. Dion Scopatullo, yeah, he's also on Moviola as well. So oh, we're not connected to the internet here, but if anybody needs the name of the book, I will give it to you afterward. So let's look at this clip. This is a pretty cool example. In this particular example, I want to use the curve. I'm going to use the curve to bring down and sort of sculpt the contrast here in my image. But I want to work on this glow with the computer. So I'm going to add a serial node. Okay, and in addition to the regular curves that you have here that I've been using, we've also got some great other options for curves. So you've got hue versus hue, hue versus sat, which I'm going to use, and a bunch of others. So I can go and I can select this part of the image, and I can say, I want that reflection to be bluer, or I don't. So you can basically just selectively color correct using a window like I showed you before, using the eyedropper with hue versus sat or hue versus hue curves. And again, you look at the before and the after, and it's just a few clicks, and now it looks like he's working in the middle of the night with his computer screen glowing on him, right? So that's awesome. Let's say you've got a bunch of shots. I love this because I'm an editor and I don't often do color demos, but I said this year, I'm going to show these guys color. Because it's so important. It's a huge part of what we do. I'm going to select 4 clips. And then I'm going to go into my split screen view. And then here it lets me choose what I want to split the screen with. So I want to show my selected clips that I've selected. So here are the 4 clips I've selected. We have a shot match tool. So let's say I like the way this color is on this car shot here. And I'm going to cut all of these clips together in the timeline. So they need to match reasonably close. I right click on the clip and I say, shot match them to this clip. And it's going to go and it's going to do its best to figure out how to do a shot match and change them all for you. So it's like, any editor can do this, even me. It's awesome. So let's show you another example of a secondary correction. So here we've got our guy, and I'm going to just scroll forward. And let's work on his face. Maybe we don't like his face so much because pretty people shouldn't look that good. So, so I'm going to go and I'm going to use the qualifier menu. So you can see that there is basically, I didn't explain this, but you have curves, qualifiers, windows, trackers, blurs and filters, keying, resizing, 3D stuff, which you get in Studio, and then burn-in for window burns and stuff. So that's what those palettes in the middle do. So I'm going to use a qualifier, and I'm just going to select his skin, and let's just look at what I'm selecting. Let me zoom back out, actually, so you can see what I'm selecting. You can adjust your selection very easily with these controls on the bottom here. You can soften, you can widen them, you can move the center, do all that stuff. So I've got his face selected. So let me turn that off. Now I'm going to zoom in. So what we can do is I can use mid-tone details to give him more stubble or to smooth his skin out. More stubble, smooth skin. More stubble, smooth skin. So again, like you can make anybody look prettier. What's that? So again, I just play that and it plays. And if I bypass that, you could see the original. So of course, I'm moving very quickly, so you would do a much better job with that isolation. Another new feature in, oh, you know what I should show you? I should show you the car clip. So I'm not going to do a lot here, but I just want to show you this clip. We have a window on this car. Let me show you. There's the window. Okay. So obviously the car moves. We have to track. We have an awesome tracker. It's a 3D cloud tracker. You can track pan, tilt, zoom, rotation, and even perspective. It'll actually follow perspective changes. So I'm going to just track that forward. You can see it's doing a pretty good job. We're losing the tail of the car a little bit, and that's okay, because I'm going to show you how easy it is to fix that. So tracking, super simple. I'm going to go, things start to go awry somewhere around here. I'm going to switch to frame mode, and now I'm just going to shift and select a bunch of these points. And this shift clicking and selecting multiple points and working on them simultaneously is also new in Resolve 12.5. So basically you can go and you can fix at any point, and you don't have to retrack. It will automatically adjust the shape. It'll animate the shape for you as it's tracking. So obviously you would spend a little more time on this to make it a clean track, but that's really pretty cool. All right, let's look at this clip. This is a fun clip because I'm going to get to show you some effects. Resolve works with OpenFX plugins. So if you've got Sapphire or anything else like that, we work with OFX plugins. We also now in 12.5, and let me make this a little bigger, have included our own collection called ResolveFX. So there's film grain, there's things like Gaussian blur, which I need to drag it onto the node, sorry. Okay, so you can add blurs. I'm going to just undo that and remove that. You can add everybody's favorite light rays. You know, we're going to do a lens flare. J.J. Abrams in the house? No? Okay, so he's become much more restrained, and I appreciate that. So here's a lens flare, and I'm going to just, we have some presets. You can, of course, adjust almost like every setting on this lens flare that you want. So obviously, I need to track the lens flare because it's not stuck to the headlight. All right, so we have a new mode for the tracker in 12.5, and it is an effects tracker, a single point tracker. So I go, I add a single point, and I say stick it there. And now we track it forward, and it's going to follow the car. So really, really cool things that you can do using the color page in Resolve if you're an editor. Just don't be afraid of it. Dig in, try it out, have fun with it. Once you understand the logical workflow of the color page, it all makes pretty good sense, and it's easy to really explore and have fun and see how these things work. All right, so that's enough of that track, I guess. Let's just, it's almost done. We'll let it finish. And it's done. Okay, so now I can go to the clip, and we can play back. So I don't have any caching turned on, so that's why it's not playing back in real time. But most of the effects and stuff, actually everything that I've done so far has been real time. Obviously, as you stack stuff up, things will tend to get a little slower if you're doing a lot of heavy stuff. All right, so I can't believe it. That is a time record for me. That is, so that's just some of the over literally 250 new features in Resolve 12.5, and now I've got about 10 minutes left, and I would love to open it up to questions and answers. Well, questions, I can't guarantee answers. So you had your hand up first, sir.
Yeah, a couple of quick questions. Online manuals and stuff like that?
So there is a manual that comes with it. You just open the help file, and it'll open the PDF for you. So. I want to say 99 to unlimited. On the edit page, it just sequentially undoes whatever you did. On the color page, it's on a clip-by-clip, node-by-node basis. So if I click on this node, I can undo the last thing I did on that node, and I can keep undoing it. If I click on this clip, I can undo the last thing that was done on that node. So the color page undo is on a clip-by-clip, node-by-node basis, which is really, really super handy. And on the edit page, it's a normal sequential undo like you would expect. Any limitations to keyboard mapping? Yeah, you could further customize it, and then you would just do a save as. And you can map them to whatever you want. There are now more commands than there are keyboard keys available. So there's, it's going to be up to you to decide what. It's like Sophie's Choice. What do you keep, what you don't? Yeah, you can do limiting and stuff like that. And then, of course, we have the scopes, which I recommend that you look at your scopes just to make sure you're not exceeding values. But yeah, you can do all that limiting on output. On the deliver page, there are a bunch of presets on the deliver page. So you can go to YouTube, Vimeo, obviously, Final Cut 10, Final Cut 7, Premiere, Avid, Pro Tools, or just audio only. And if you want to create a completely manual output, you could select all of your video, audio, and file settings under here. So the deliver page is pretty straightforward. You can do your entire timeline or just an in and out range. You can export as. Yep, so if you want to send out to mix to Pro Tools, it's an AAF, it's not an OMF. Avid's deprecated OMF, so we've gone with AAF. So let me take some other questions down here. Yeah. Do you have a sample of doing green screen? I don't have a sample green screen clip here, but I can show you very quickly how our keyer works. If I go into this shot here, let's say I wanted to change the background. Let me go select my 3D here. I just swipe, and it will show me the matte that I'm creating. I can clean it up. I can invert it if I want. Let me just invert that. I can clean my white up. So you have all these sort of controls to finesse it here. I'm, of course, being very sloppy at the moment with it. You can also shift-click to add more points. So you hear it. This is my first sample. This is my second sample that I swiped. And then you could go in and let's say I just wanted to, change that sky. But the principle is exactly the same if you were using a green screen. You just swipe it, and then you would finesse your matte, and then you would have your composite.
I saw you get Sony S-Log2, but not one. Can I customize those existing LUTs? Stop it.
Yeah, so those are not actually LUTs. That's DaVinci Resolve's color management system. So, okay, so the question was, can you customize the LUTs that I showed in the input color space menu that I showed you with all the different camera formats? Those are not actually LUTs. Those are real mathematical transformations. So you don't actually clip or ever lose any data. It's all non-destructive. You can grade over or under it. It's not like a LUT. There is support for LUTs. You can import and export any LUT you want, 1D, 3D. They're all here under color. So we've got a bunch of LUTs here. We've got S-Log2 to 709. You can import your own LUTs, do whatever you want, and then you can apply them. And then you can just click on any clip, and you can add whatever LUTs you want if you want to use LUTs. Yeah, that's a really good point. So there is a version of DaVinci Resolve Studio that is on the App Store from Apple, and I think it's $4.95. It's half price, basically, from DaVinci Resolve Studio. The difference with that is because of Apple's rules regarding a technology called sandboxing, it does not work with plugins. So no OpenFX plugin support in that version. But other than that, it's the same as Studio. Yeah. Is there, Steve?
With all the adding of metadata and stuff and exchanging between different apps, is the metadata embedded in files in sort of project metadata or both?
So the metadata is embedded in our project. Resolve 12.5 introduces import and export of all metadata via CSV. So you can get your metadata in or out with a standard CSV file. Great questions. Here in the middle?
Is there, like right now, you've added some colors, some effects. Is there a view that we can look at on the timeline that will let us know from a global perspective everything that's been done to the timeline?
No, the timeline is just a standard timeline. You don't see like layers with effects and filters on it.
If I look at a clip, I
if there's, so if there's a motion effect, and actually, let me switch to my other one really quick. So this is the other thing, we have dynamic project switching in 12.5, so you don't have to, you can have multiple projects open at the same time. So if I zoom into this clip, for example, you can see that I've got a little keyframe and curve icon here. This tells me that I've got effects on this clip, that I've got like a transformation or something on this clip. If you want to see color, though, you do have to go to the color page and find the clip. And you can see this little rainbow outline. That tells me that there's something done to this clip. The gray outlines mean there's nothing done to those clips. You can also, you see the format of the clip on the strip here. If I double click, it changes to the file name. If I double click again, it changes to the version number. If I have multiple versions of grades, because you can have different versions. In this case, I don't have those. So you have some flexibility to turn on and off and see different data. That could help you. So I'm assuming that if you've sunk your clips and pluralized, you've created new media, right? So that media should come in with your XML from Premiere. So the thing about Premiere is, love the guys at Adobe, but really wish they would use a more current version of XML. They're using the Final Cut 7 XML library, and as somebody mentioned earlier, I think Phil Hodgetts maybe said it, they've sort of done their own thing with it now and modified it. So we would love to interoperate more with them, but they're sort of rolling their own thing. So we support XML import, but it is based on the old Final Cut 7 XML, so those are the limitations there. You don't get your bins, but you do get all your clips and your cuts and everything else. And your pluralized media should be new media files, so you would get those too.
We have to move along. Please thank Paul Saccone.